Welcome to another edition of JAX TV here from the W-JAX 2012 in Munich. With me is Neal Ford. He is a director, software architect, and meme wrangler at ThoughtWorks. Neal, what is a meme wrangler?
So ThoughtWorks, for better or for worse, allows you to pick your own titles for your business cards. So my first set of business cards reflected the realities of my job, which were application architect, before I realized in the US that frequently architect means post-useful, that you spend more time in Visio than you do in code. And so for my second set of business cards, I decided to go more abstract, which is meme wrangler. And for those of you not familiar with the term, Richard Dawkins coined this term meme, which is a viral unit of thought. So a meme is to a thought as a gene is to DNA, and then someone who wrangles either herds and gathers or moderates arguments about things, and both meanings kind of relate to my job. And so my second set of business cards was just meme wrangler, but that's confusing to people who don't understand the term. And so over time it has evolved into my actual title, which is director and software architect and meme wrangler.
Okay, sounds interesting, and we want to talk about another interesting topic, thinking. You were talking here at the W-JAX about functional languages, about Clojure, about continuous delivery, and it seems to me, that thinking is a very important aspect, because your claim is that learning a new language is not really difficult, but learning a new paradigm of thinking, so how to use maybe functional language is interesting. What do you mean with that?
So that's the really tough thing when you want to learn a new style of programming, like functional programming, if you're an object-oriented imperative developer, because you've had a lot of practice in learning new languages in your career. Learning new languages is easy. You just have to learn what the syntax for the loops are and what the syntax for decisions are. And so learning the new syntax is easy, but one of the really dangers that you fall into is, so let's say that you're trying to learn Scala, and you learn the syntax, but you write Scala code that looks like Java translated poorly into Scala. And so your first experience in a new language is almost always writing in the new language exactly like you did in the old language until you learn how the new building blocks work, how the new paradigms work. And in fact, that's really the point where you start understanding new languages, when you start having epiphanies and revelations about, wow, I don't have to do it this old way. There's a much newer, much better way, for some value of better, that I've learned to do. And the nice thing about that is once you've acquired that knowledge, frequently you can take it back to your older language that you're used to and maybe code in on an everyday basis.
You're talking about a new and an old way. So why should a Java developer, its old way maybe, start to be interested in functional languages?
Well, that's a really good question, one that I address in my functional thinking talk. If you look at the extensions that are happening to all the major languages right now, to Groovy, even to Java in its next version, they're adding these functional constructs like higher order functions. Groovy has recently added this really nice low-level feature called memoization, which will automatically cache function values for pure functions, so eliminating the need to handwrite caching code. This is really important because over time we cede more and more control of details to our languages and runtime. So for example, we don't really worry about garbage collection anymore because the runtime handles those details. With higher order functions, and particularly sophisticated functions like map or reduce, you're letting the runtime handle more of the details of the individual items, and you're stating high-level facts about how to filter or how to map those things into the results that you want. And so even if you're not planning to go to Scala or Clojure anytime soon, these extensions, these functional extensions, are coming to the language that you're in, whether you like it or not. And it's really important to understand some of the way those work so that you can take advantage of these features as they show up in your language, because just like garbage collection in Java, they're almost always a way to solve the same problems you're solving now in a much better way.
Mm-hmm. One thing with functional languages is, if you're used to common languages like Java maybe, which makes maybe the programmers, developers hesitant, is that functional languages have the taste of being academic and not productive. Is that true?
Well, certainly functional programming started as an academic offshoot, but what's happening is that all those features are merging into our languages now. So, for example, Hadoop is a good example of a MapReduce framework. Well, that's really a functional concept expanded into a framework in the Java world. So that's a very, very useful concept. There are certainly some things that tend to be on the academic side and will probably stay in academia for a while. But there are also some fantastic things that have come out of academia into our languages, like software transactional memory in Clojure and in Haskell is a very, very sophisticated thing. And the original research for that came from academia. One of the problems that we run into in functional programming is that a lot of the discoveries in functional programming were made in languages and then only categorized later. And so you'll see the same terms show up in different languages. They have the same meaning, but they have different nomenclature, different syntax. So for example, you get inject in Groovy is really the same as reduce in a language like Clojure, which is the same as fold or fold left in a library like functional Java. All three of them mean the same thing, but it's just a different nomenclature because they were developed, the ideas were developed before they realized that it was all one category and they could name them one thing.
That all sounds like you encourage developers to broaden their scope of what they have knowledge about, to widen their knowledge about new techniques, new technologies, but also about other concepts. Like you mentioned Richard Dawkins, he's a philosopher, so he's way up of the fields. Or what some examples this morning, your sessions were higher class math. And so thinking is maybe a habit like smoking, and it's sometimes really difficult to quit smoking, even if you have the want to do it. How can a developer change his habit of thinking? What do you suggest?
Well, it's very easy when you're in a technical field to get immersed in a particular flavor of technology, and you can easily spend all of your time there. But the problem with that is, even though you refine your knowledge in that one space, you're missing out on a lot of other spaces. So I think it's a good idea to try to expand into other technical realms and even non-technical realms, because you always get new insights into any realm you're in by the synergy with other subjects. One of my favorite things in college was always the accidental combination of classes you'd take at the same time. I remember I took a history class and an automata class at the same time, and they overlapped some time period, and it was fascinating to see, detailed history and then detailed work from that same time period. It added a lot of nuance to the knowledge. So I think you're right. I think it's something that you have to really pursue. It's not something that comes automatically or naturally. So there's a lot of research that says, it takes 20 days or 3 weeks to form a new habit. So maybe it's not a bad idea to set a little time aside every day and start poking around at some of these advanced concepts like functional programming and or monads, or something like a really strange language like an Erlang, or something that's completely different out of your normal paradigm, because learning those things will improve the way that you use your everyday language and improve the way that you see problems that you encounter. So I think it's an important thing to pursue that as an ongoing habit and as an ongoing activity.
Okay, thank you very much, Neal, for these insights. We can only say, start thinking, start to be curious. Thank you very much.